Welcome to the Friday edition of the show. IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling. Vince D'Addario, Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers. Scintillating conversation going on in the backstage before we started the show tonight.
I mean, all there is to it, where it comes down to, is Jesse's on board with Gold Standard Friday. Like, I can tell by the color of his shirt, he's on board with it. So it's Gold Standard Friday.
But I went
rapid fire. Oh,
with this
very apropos.
Yes, we will end the show with some Top Gun conversation later on tonight. We've all been looking forward to that.
I have been waiting weeks for this conversation, and I can't wait, frankly. I want to just jump right to the end, but we got a lot to get to before
we do, man. This show, like it's cliche, I think sometimes say, oh, we got so much. We got a fully loaded show. We're going to rock and roll. We got so much to talk about. And I tell you what, we got a lot to talk about today.
We do. We do.
I'm
good at math.
I was debating slipping one more topic in after I sent you guys, but I'm like, man, we got so much, and that Top Gun stuff is probably going to go for a while. So
I'm excited.
So here we are. Here we are. So I saw this article on The Athletic this week, and 3 different college football writers they each put together their own list of the all-time villains of college football. And they only went back to 1980, which I thought was interesting. But
I mean, 1980 is a pretty stinking good year. So,
well, yeah,
it's 43 years ago, which is a little weird as far as like that's the year they picked.
Not a long time. Yeah.
I mean, but 1980, very solid year.
Yeah, exactly. So they went back to 1980. One of the writers included Notre Dame football on his list of the villains of college football, and another one included former Notre Dame head coach Charlie Weis. So let's start with Notre Dame in general. What do you guys think of Notre Dame being included on a list of college football villains? And again, remember, this goes back to 1980. So we're talking about 1 national championship and 1 Heisman Trophy in that stretch. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't classify Notre Dame as a villain, and I think the only thing that rubs people the wrong way that would call them a villain is their non-association with the conference when it comes to football. That's really got to be the only thing, because it's not like Notre Dame has ongoing, what I would say scandals going on. I know that there was that situation with Brian Kelly and the tutoring and all that stuff, and like you said, they only have 1 national championship, 1 Heisman. In order to be a villain, I feel like, one, you have to have a ton of success, and success would be national championships, winning high leverage games, New Year's Six Bowls games, and those are things we know Notre Dame is.
So you would put Alabama. You would include Alabama, for example, by that.
Right? Yeah, like Alabama would be on that list. I think Georgia's starting to creep up on the list.
Don't jump the questions now.
Yeah, I don't want to. We've got other. Yeah, that's exactly right. But I'm just saying, by that definition,
correct.
Alabama fits it a lot more than Notre Dame. What Jesse's saying there.
No doubt. I tend to agree that Notre Dame is a villain, because it's kind of a love them or hate them situation. And I think you can equate Notre Dame to like the New York Yankees. Either you are a diehard Yankee fan or you hate the Yankees. I don't think that there's a whole lot of in between. And I think a lot of people look at Notre Dame the very same way. It's like you hate us because you ain't us. It's like it's that kind of a thing. And there's not a whole lot of people out there that are middle of the road when it comes to Notre Dame.
Yeah,
I've found in the many years since 1980. By the way, I mean you're either a Notre Dame person or you hate Notre Dame for whatever reason it happens to be. Whether it's a conference issue, whether it's the fact that they have their own TV deal, they think that they're always overrated. There's going to be all of that. It's always going to happen. So Notre Dame, I think, qualifies as a villain. I do.
When I saw this list, I was quite frankly shocked. because again, it's not like Notre Dame has rattled off multiple national championships or, even been like Oklahoma and been in, Oklahoma's been in a few more college football playoffs, for example, than Notre Dame. Like, again, if we're going back to 1980, pretty much everything that Notre Dame accomplished, like there is a lot of love-hate, obviously, with Notre Dame, like you're talking about. They're very polarizing, but most of that occurred before 1980, I guess. Is my point. So it's definitely a multi-generational thing, and it probably stems from what household you happen to be brought up in.
Sure.
You were for Notre Dame or you were against Notre Dame when you were growing up, and because of that, there is no in between. But I agree with like what Jesse was saying. I think that most of probably what makes Notre Dame a villain now is especially the way everything is funneling towards these big conferences. There are obviously, if you're not a Notre Dame fan, it's much more likely than not you are ticked off at Notre Dame because they're still bucking the system.
It's
They're
jealousy.
They're the only major independent out there. They've got their own TV contract. They're doing their thing on NBC. And the fact that Notre Dame is really the last holdout in terms of major college football independence, that obviously irks a lot of people. So to me, like, that has to be a lot of what would make Notre Dame a villain in today's college football world.
It's jealousy. They may not admit that that's what it is, but they're jealous. They're jealous of the fact that Notre Dame is able to do what they're able to do financially and still have, the brand recognition, the world following, all of the things that Notre Dame has. People are flat out jealous, and they'll mask their jealousy with, well, they should be like everybody else and they should be in a conference and they're going to need to be in a conference. But we all know that the fact of the matter is they don't need to be in a conference, and people are jealous. They're jealous that they need a conference to be relevant, and Notre Dame doesn't.
Like Josh is saying here, he doesn't understand the hate because they aren't in a conference. It's harder to be independent, not easier. I mean, that is exactly right. Yes. But it's everyone wants everyone else to go along. Everyone wants to say that they're the Maverick or the outlier, whatever. They're doing their own thing. They're not just following lockstep, but pretty much when it comes to college sports, everyone else is doing lockstep, and Notre Dame is still out here doing its own thing. And, again, being different, if you're the one that's not doing what everybody else is doing, it's going to tick everybody else off. I mean, they're not going to see your side of it. No. Like they want you to do what they're doing. And and that's just what it comes down to.
I see what you did there, by the way. You said Notre Dame's a Maverick. I picked it up.
Keeping it thematic.
I picked it up. Saying.
Jess, how's your audio working out over there? Uh-oh. We don't hear you at all. So I'm not sure.
I had a lot of background noise going on.
Oh, I know you do. I know you do.
Yes, you do.
Where did the background noise come from?
I don't know. There's a lot of walking around and
it's like a hum. It's like a steady.
It sounds like a fan. You were asking me about your fan the other day. I could barely hear it, but it sounds like there's a fan or something buzzing in your ear.
Yeah, there's one over here.
Okay.
It's gotten better though. It went down from what it was. So I think we're good.
Yeah. Anything else to add there, Jess, before we continue?
I do find Notre Dame to be comparable to like the Yankees, the Cowboys,
the
Lakers, the Celtics,
Duke basketball.
I think they fall in that realm of, like Vince was kind of saying, you really love them because you are a fan, you're a diehard, or you really hate them because you're not a fan of them.
Yeah. Right, exactly. There's no in between. There's no middle road when it comes to certain teams, and Notre Dame is just one of them.
Yep, I concur. So, Charlie Weis, another writer, put him on his list and said Charlie made himself a villain when he came through the door, boasting about his decided schematic advantage. We all remember that around here. You were going to have a decided schematic advantage.
Oh, I remember that.
Team goes on the field. That's right. And the writer also mentioned all the money that Weis made between Notre Dame and Kansas, despite the fact that he had just a 41-49 record as a head coach at the two schools. I was much more shocked at seeing Charlie Weis being included on this list, probably, than Notre Dame. How about you guys?
I was very shocked to see Charlie Weis on there because I don't look at him. I don't look at Charlie Weis as a villain by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like he is a guy who took advantage of a couple of situations, but why does that make him a villain? I mean, Notre Dame was dumb enough to give him a 10-year contract. Kansas was dumb enough to keep him around as long as they did, give him the contract that they gave him.
You don't give yourself the contract. Someone's got to give it to you.
So
right? That's more on Kevin White than it's on Charlie Weis.
100%. And I don't understand why he would be a villain because of that. If somebody offered me a 10-year deal worth all that money, I'd be like, yeah, where do I sign?
Anyone's going to take the money they're giving you, and you're always going to negotiate on your own behalf.
Absolutely.
I don't see Charlie Weis as a villain because
he didn't win anything. How are you a villain? I mean, he was, I don't know. He wasn't successful at either place overall. And so I have a hard time seeing Charlie Weis as a villain.
We can't hear you again, Jess.
Charlie Weis at Notre Dame definitely was not a villain because of the lack of success. Like, he came in with a ton of offense, but really didn't accomplish a whole lot. But at Kansas, I feel like you could label him a villain because of how he tore down the program in terms of their scholarship and roster situation. That was villainous activity to me. He kind of walked into a situation, blew it up, left it, and didn't have any regard for how he left it. At Notre Dame, though, I don't see anything that was villainous.
Andre's got his Rod Tidwell answer. Show me the money. Jerry Maguire. Another
not
Tom
wrong.
Cruise.
But I see where Jesse's coming from. I could get on board with that point of view. If you are a Kansas fan or even a Notre Dame fan, I mean, the recruiting was not fantastic. I mean, we know that he knows offense, right? If he's got the guys in place, he doesn't know how to be a head coach. Those are two gravely different things. And so that's why nobody got developed at Notre Dame. And then there was a chasm of time where the talent just wasn't there. And, I don't know all the details about Kansas because I know you guys are closer to that situation than I am, but he definitely didn't leave it like he found it. So,
yeah, I mean, and I've kind of talked about the Kansas stuff before. And a couple years back, there was a really good article. It might have been on The Athletic that detailed just everything that went on at Kansas with Charlie Weis, and Salty's asking how many scholarship spots were empty when Weis left. It was like they were, the limit obviously is 85. They were at like 55 or something like that. And that's what took them so long to dig out, because you were never, there's always been a limit on how many players you can sign in a given year. So you're going to lose the seniors.
Sure.
And they were not. Now, remember a couple of years back, they allowed, they granted some kind of waiver where you could oversign up to a certain amount or something like that. But that wasn't going on in the post Charlie Weis era. He went in, there were some problem players on the roster that he ran off, and his plan was to follow the Bill Snyder plan at Kansas State, which was go the junior college route and bring in a lot of junior college players and go that route, to help bolster your roster. Well, the problem with the way Charlie Weis did it at Kansas was the majority of the guys he was bringing in at Kansas were non-academic qualifiers when they were coming out of high school. So, he brings these guys in and they're not making grades, and then they're flunking out when they get there. So the roster was just a holy mess. And, again, because between those things, their roster shrunk so far, and it literally took them like a decade to build the roster back up, to an actual functioning, they were gray shirting guys. They were doing, trying to get as creative as possible, and again, like there was no open transfer portal at that time either. Right. So there wasn't even a way to go that route. So it was just that he left Kansas in a total mess, and it took I think like 3 coaches afterwards, to dig them out of that hole that Charlie Weis left him in. So like if you're a Kansas fan or a Kansas football fan, you can easily see Charlie Weis as a villain. I mean, he didn't do it intentionally. He was trying to do it. He just went about it, didn't go about it in the right way. I don't think there was any malice. I mean, he wanted to win. It's not the way it worked out, the way he was trying to get it done there. at Kansas. So I still have a hard time finding him on this list. I think there are plenty of other people that I would put far ahead of Charlie Weis in terms of villains in college football.
No doubt.
So each of you guys, top 2 current college football villains. I think one of them is easy. I'd be shocked if both of you don't say the same thing. But I'll see. Jess, you want to go first?
Are we doing
two current college football villains?
Yeah. So are we doing like program, player,
whatever you want,
anything?
whatever you want it to be? It can be it can be a program, it can be a player, it can be a coach, it can be an administrator, as long as they have something to do with college football.
Yeah. So currently, I'm actually going to say Deion Sanders is a college football villain right now.
Well done, sir.
That's pretty easy. The way things have gone so far.
Good. That's really good.
And then my next one would probably be. I'm trying to diversify and think of like a player.
Ooh.
Who could be a villain?
You're getting
I think
personal.
Players are tougher right now.
Well, so the next question, past villain. I have an easy one for that. That's a player.
We'll stick to current.
Save that.
Stick to current.
Yeah.
For right now.
Vince, you give one. I'm still.
No problem. Michigan. Villain.
And I mean, Jim Harbaugh would obviously be there if he.
And that's what I was gonna say, but like that was he's.
But it's just Michigan. I mean, yes, Jim Harbaugh would have been like the face of it before a few months ago when he left to go to the Chargers. But it's still Michigan. I mean, they're still the villain. They cheated. They got their championship. How that is not villainous activity, I don't know what is. Michigan is the top of my list, and it's not close.
Wow, really? Not close. I'm shocked that neither one of you had Brian Kelly coming out of your mouth first.
That's my second one.
Okay.
Number 2.
Okay.
That was my number 2, but Michigan is still my number 1 because someday Brian Kelly's going to go away. Michigan will always be there, and they will always be the ire and the villain in my life when it comes to my football fandom.
Right. Jesse, is BK on your list?
No, Ryan Day was my second one.
Yeah. And I've got Ryan Day as well. Brian Kelly and Ryan Day.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Especially after the whole,
the whole Lou Holtz thing and the
shouting match. I was going to use a different word with Lou Holtz last year on TV, after the game. And
that was bad. That was a bad look.
It was just,
that was a bad look, man.
I don't know how you can be an Ohio State fan and not think that's a bad look. But, I would also say, again, because of what's happened in college football in the last 2 years, Big Ten and the SEC, would you include them?
You absolutely could.
Yeah,
because they're the bullies.
100%.
Yeah, they're the bullies on the block, man.
Sloppy Joe says Paul Feinbaum as well. He's got Ryan Day and Feinbaum.
He's
if
more
you're a Notre
Dame
fan, it's Feinbaum because he never says anything good about Notre Dame,
and that's fine. But I don't know that makes him a villain. It makes him more of a clown than anything else. Like his takes are very clownish to me because they're so SEC centered. Like I get that you're an SEC guy, dude, but come on, man. Like at least give some accurate reporting. I mean, he's just a clown show.
Brent's not high on Kirk Herbstreit.
I don't mind Kirk.
A lot of people are in that same boat, but I don't mind him either. Stymie says the playoff committee. I mean, there's always something shady.
The playoff committee, if you're looking at it from a Notre Dame standpoint, has been very good to Notre Dame.
True.
So if you're a Notre Dame fan, they're not your villain.
Yeah.
No way.
Josh says, wouldn't Michigan be considered old news? Not to Vince. Michigan will never be old news to Vince.
Nope.
There will always be an
Vince, I'm surprised you didn't go with USC because it's like Notre Dame doesn't even play Michigan anymore.
Well, they're going to be an answer to another question, but I'm not using the same team for all of my questions.
That's fair.
All time. The next question is all time. Who are your top, I don't care how many, your all-time college football villains? Start
there
throwing
it is.
Some out there.
Right there. USC. They're my all-time college villain. They were, that whole stretch with Pete Carroll. Like it was like growing up for me, Notre Dame dominated USC through the 80s and the early to mid 90s. Like just absolutely dominated USC. It was fantastic. Like, it's not even really a rivalry. Well, then USC got Pete Carroll and they got Reggie Bush and they had the string of Heismans and, all that. And they just that's when they really became villainous to me because they were also skirting the rules, and they were doing things they probably shouldn't have done, and the whole thing, and they're your rival. So it's like, you know what? Villain.
And it's funny as well, because like we mentioned Harbaugh, because he was just at Michigan, obviously, and Vince's hate for Michigan will always carry the day. But, we've talked about this before. Like when Harbaugh had just arrived at Stanford, and Stanford sucked forever, and USC was running the West Coast, basically running the whole country out there with Pete Carroll. They were definitely the villain in that era, especially, after we found out about the Reggie Bush and all that different kind of stuff. But Jim Harbaugh was kind of the guy riding in on the white horse back then with the whole, what's your deal? What's your deal? With the thing after the Stanford when they went head to head out there on the field. But that obviously changed pretty quickly as Jim Harbaugh came back to college football. And he was just I just never understood the combativeness that Harbaugh had when he went to Michigan. Just like the whole between not releasing depth charts and just like as much as I don't like, Cowherd, like the whole, I don't know if you remember that interview where, he was just not wanting to answer any questions basically, and just being very, stubborn and hard-headed. And he's been like that with the media, obviously quite a bit, just very combative for no real reason.
He changed. Like he was I hate to say it because of who he is now. He was a likable guy at Stanford, in my opinion. I actually had a lot of respect for what he was able to do at Stanford. I had a lot of respect for the offense that he was running with with all the tackles and the tight ends and just just bashing your face in.
Old school ground and pound. Yeah.
I had a lot of respect for that, to be perfectly honest with you. And then he went to Michigan. He lost his ever-loving mind, it felt like that. I mean, he just went off the deep end, and it's just like, okay, I can't root for this guy anymore. And granted, he's got the big M on his hat, so that makes it harder anyway. But I thought it was a good hire at the time. I thought, Jim Harbaugh is a good coach. When it was, the Harbaugh brothers and the Super Bowl and the whole thing, like I was on board with a lot of that kind of stuff. And then he went to Michigan. He just completely changed, and now he's easy to hate. He's easy to root against.
I have two easy ones.
Okay. Before you do that, I just wanted to read Salty's question. He said, the question is villain. Michigan won a natty with sanctions pending for all kinds of bold-faced cheating. It is active criminal and makes them the villains. I mean, that's very true. Like after everything that went on last year, they obviously became an even bigger villain, with the sign stealing scandal and all that stuff.
Hey, I want to throw something out here. Josh brought up that Clemson stole signs during the game. There's nothing wrong with stealing signs during a game. That's called gamesmanship.
Right.
It's when
it's the advanced scouting stuff that's completely illegal. Yeah.
Right. It's like if I'm coaching a baseball team and I could read the signs of the third base coach and I know what the bunt signal is or the hit and run. Yeah. That's gamesmanship. If
you can do it during a game, that's a skill. But if you're going to go out and record their signs in advance and then come back, that's not a skill. I mean, you're using technology. That's the cheating aspect. Yeah. And I realize a lot of people are trying to say, well, people steal signs all the time and trying to equate the two. That's completely different when you're standing on a sideline or up in the press box, active during a game and trying to decipher signals while the game is going on, as opposed to literally putting together a book with the signals that they have, and here's what this means, right, and having it right there, ready to read off as a cheat sheet during the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Jess, go ahead.
My first would be Urban Meyer, and then my second
him as well.
My second would be Johnny Manziel, off the top of my head.
Good one.
I also would throw out Alabama as a program. I would throw out. Oh, this is 1980. Let me hang on.
Well, this is all time, so you can go past 1980 if you want. Whatever.
I'd say Barry Switzer as well.
Okay. Well, Switzer was mostly his prominence 80s. Was in the 80s. Yeah. So
those
you
are
don't like the bootleggers, boy. That's another guy that you got a picture with back in the College Football Hall of Fame days here in South Bend.
We were thinking the other day, Vince. I need to put together like a catalog of these people that I've run into, because I think
you have quite the laundry list because of your dad and because of the College Football Hall of Fame,
right?
And I mean,
that's why I just need to sit down one day because it's like I
Yeah.
can't recollect all of it. A lot of it when I was
gonna say
younger.
you were younger. Yeah.
I've got to go, and I can't believe nobody in the chat has brought this up. Is all these Notre Dame fans? Oh,
There it
finally,
is. Like right on cue.
D-Hawk
Right
was
on.
literally about to trip off my tongue.
Wow.
Yes.
Right on cue.
The you and Jimmy Johnson. Boom. You nailed it. I mean, you talk about arguably that program, one of the greatest villains in college football history. And, with like all the stuff that was going on with that program, when they finally cleaned it up, what's happened? They've never been as good since they cleaned it up, and
best pregame speech of all time at Notre Dame. I don't care. Newt Rockne. Yeah, I get it. But you say Jimmy Johnson's that's for me. That's the best pregame speech ever.
Yes.
Like that gets me fired up, and I wasn't even there. Oh, I love it.
That's right.
Love it.
That's right. Yep. Jimmy and the U. That's got to be at the top of the list for me. Tommy says Boston College kicker. Yeah, that didn't work out very well. Josh says refs in the Florida State game. Yeah, we're getting a little micro.
Yeah, yes, we are. Little micro. You're right about that.
That's right.
But there's plenty, if you're a Notre Dame fan, there's plenty to hate.
Stabby said, has anyone nominated Chris Fowler? He says he doesn't mind Herbie, but Fowler makes his skin crawl. I mean, I've never found him overly offensive. Sometimes he can kind of get on my nerves a little bit, but
sometimes he gets onto something and then just doesn't let it go. I guess is the best way to put it. Like in game, like whatever storyline they're kind of pushing, he'll hold on to that thing with like
a little high horse sometimes.
Yeah, but like I don't mind his voice. I don't mind necessarily the way he calls a game. Like that stuff doesn't necessarily bother me. And of course, he's going to be on the new NCAA football game, so better get used to your Chris Fowler.
Very true. Fowler, Herb Street, I think is going to like all those ESPN guys. I think
so. There's multiple crews, which I think is a nice little addition to have different crews and things like that.
I'll be curious to see what other crews they use because Fowler is really the only one that I've heard about.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Corey says the NCAA, and I think that's all time.
That's everybody's villain.
I think that kind of segues us into our next topic here, and that is the NCAA and the Power Five conferences. Is it still the Power Five? Like, I guess they're still.
They say the Power Five.
They're including the Pac-12 or the Pac-2 or whatever out there.
Yeah.
But they've agreed to allow schools to directly pay players for the first time in more than 100 years of college sports. They've also agreed to a revenue sharing plan where each school is going to share up to roughly $20 million a year with the athletes. So what do you think this means for college athletics? What do you think it means for Notre Dame? This is hard because we're trying to sort of figure this out. I think a lot of people, like I've seen a lot of people talking about this today and heard, obviously a lot of people talking about this today. They're not really giving a lot of opinion on what ultimately they think it is. It's more or less just spelling out everything that just happened because I think the answers are kind of hard to come by. So I'm not sure what you guys think about this.
Well, I guess I need a lot more clarification on, what this means. I just feel like the money's just coming from a different place. Like basically the schools are already paying these kids. It just comes from a collective that's essentially run by somebody at the school. So it's just you're defining where the money is coming from potentially. Like I would need it explained to me how this is going to be any different for these kids. Now, is it like,
well, because now you can go out and pay upfront money and you don't like with NIL, you're basically getting paid for endorsements, whereas now you're just getting paid. There's zero
not doing anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, you're just saying it's okay, but it's been going on forever. So there's plenty of people that are getting NIL money for not doing a damn thing. So, I just don't see how this is any different. I guess that's my biggest thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the money's just being routed in a different way ultimately. And I think you've kind of introduced like a middleman what's the word that people use when money is like if Oh, the money, it's like an escrow situation. It kind of feels like.
I was going to say, we're not laundering. I wasn't
No,
sure where
no.
you were going there.
No,
I feel like they're getting rid of the money laundering. I
Yeah,
feel like that's
right.
what's actually happening.
Yeah, and so it feels like an escrow or situation where the money is kind of being routed, and there's more so of kind of like a middleman now. But to me, the big picture, and like Vince said, it's hard to like digest all this. And I think over time, as more information kind of comes out, it'll be easier to understand. But to me, it just feels like college football is translating into or transitioning into a minor league system for the NFL ultimately at the end of the day. And that's what it feels like to me is that college football,
it's already been that, but now they're going to be compensated as if they're,
and so it feels more so, it feels kind of like detaching from the universities and the traditions and that sort of stuff and literally just going for a paycheck, which I don't like. And how I think it affects Notre Dame. I don't really think it affects Notre Dame too much because I don't think Notre Dame I think they're going to do things how they're supposed to, according to protocol and stuff like that. But I don't think Notre Dame is obviously going to keep up with, the checks that are going to be written by Alabama's and Georgia's and
that
those other
affects
schools.
Notre Dame if they're not willing to. Because
that's kind of goes into my next point though. Is Notre Dame's selling point is, it's like, do you want upfront cash or do you want an investment down the road? And I think that's what you do at Notre Dame is you sum on the investment of education. Yeah, you can make $100,000 now, but you can make $1 million over your career with a Notre Dame degree. I think that's ultimately how it affects Notre Dame is just kind of how you piece together the whole package, essentially.
Yeah, D-Hawk says, it's a horrendous idea. College athletics is ruined. Maybe they put a cap on what can be spent to level the field. There is a cap. It is $20 million per school, basically.
But then you can still get NIL money on top of that. So it's $20 million that the school can give.
And I think that it's going to, again, you're still going to have NIL, but it also feels like the schools are probably going to be leaning on boosters to help them come up with this $20 million.
Sure.
Because everyone wants to cry poor, with how much money that they've got, and that's the thing to me is, between the NCAA, the schools, the athletic departments, they've been trying to give us this virtuous narrative forever about amateurism. And the problem is, they want us to believe it's about amateur athletics and degrees and blah, 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 but the reality is obviously college athletics are a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. And for a century now, who was not getting paid in this multi-billion-dollar enterprise?
Sure.
The athletes who people were actually going to see. You've got the NCAA president, whether it was Mark Emmert before or Charlie Baker now, look at all the Power 5 conference commissioners, they're all making over $3 million a year, and why are they making all this money? It's because of the billions of dollars that they're raking in these TV contracts. And, the SEC and the Big Ten want to pat themselves on the back about the TV contracts. Well, you've got a lot of money. So, now it's a matter of, sorry, you've actually got to give some of that up because the reason you've got the money is the athletes who are running out there on the field. And, and like, I know Father Jenkins put out that statement yesterday and he didn't want to completely, pull out his gloves and beat it down. But at the same time, he's saying the same thing that they still want this to be an academic pursuit, which I get. He's obviously in that business, but Father Jenkins has got a pretty big paycheck himself, that he brings in as the school's president, so it's
vow of poverty.
It's just a new time. And I think it's going to change a lot of things. And, the question for Notre Dame and for any school really is going to be, okay, you're going to have this $20 million per year limit, but how much are you going to be willing, to spend up to that limit? And how is that ultimately going to affect the competitiveness that you're going to have year in and year out? Because if you're not willing to spend, in the Alabamas and Georgias and, Clemson's and whoever else, and they're all willing to spend, there's going to be some impact, obviously, on what you do from a competitive standpoint.
Sure. I will also throw out there that not every recruit is looking for the biggest payday.
Yeah.
That's still a fact. It's not going to be the highest bidder is going to win no matter what.
There's still development. There's still coaches.
I get that, but it just scares me because now the paychecks are bigger. There's a much bigger, there's a much bigger amount of money that's going to be available out there than there was before.
I get that.
There was money out there before, but now when you're talking $20 million per school,
but isn't that going to spread out the talent? In theory, like baseball, maybe, or like football. Excuse me, like the NFL.
I mean essentially now there's a salary cap. Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, I think it did with NIL, but again, it's like
because A&M spent all that money on their recruiting class, and where did it get them? They got him a new coach and a bunch of guys that transferred out. That I think every one of us could have probably predicted was going to happen. Right. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. All I'm saying is I don't think the highest bidder is necessarily going to be the most successful program. There's still kids out there that aren't just looking for the biggest payout when picking what school they're going to go to.
Yeah, but now that everyone is going to be getting a little bit of something,
sure that evens it out though. That's the way I look at it. That evens it out. If it's money to go around,
you're saying everybody's paying it. So, it's like if I'm getting $1.5 million here versus $1 million there, what's the difference with the $500,000?
That's what I was kind of saying in terms of the package. Like you're going to have money, you're going to have coaches, you're going to have, this is what our degree is. This is,
don't forget. Yeah. I mean, it's not just about football either. It's about all these different sports. And I think that's where now, if Notre Dame or any school all of a sudden now has to start shelling out, and I'll just, continue to say up to $20 million bucks a year. Well, again, they've got a set amount of revenue that they've got, and you balance your budget based on the incoming revenue that you expect. So something's got to give at some point, because now if more of your budget has to be devoted to this pool of money for the revenue share, you're probably going to end up cutting some sports someplace along the line. And says Tommy's saying Title IX is about to go bye-bye. Title IX is not going anywhere. If anything, they'll just cut men's Olympic sports. They'll cut more wrestling programs. They'll cut swimming. Whatever they can. That's whatever. You're going to see some of those sports eliminated. Essentially, you're going to start with what generates the least amount of money. And what costs us the most money, and that's where they'll start. But they'll start with men's sports before women, because Title IX is here to stay, whether there's money involved now or not.
Title IX goes all the way to high school. Like high schools even have to submit Title IX reports, and they have to have equal number or within a certain percentage male athletes to female athletes, and I mean it's all the way down to the high school level. So we're talking 14-year-olds that have to be, following Title IX. So. Yeah, Title IX is not going anywhere. I can promise you that.
So Brent has a few good questions here that he's got stacked up. Explain the difference in NIL between Notre Dame and Texas A&M. Now, are you saying the difference in money, or are you saying the difference in philosophy? Because
I would assume it'd have to be money, right? It's just everyone has NIL. It's just a matter of how much NIL you have and how easily you're giving it out. Are you giving it out because someone waved to a crowd of people? Or are you doing it because they actually went and recorded a car dealership commercial and, et cetera? I think that's the biggest difference in how the NIL is distributed.
Yeah. I mean, and based on, there was a list that On3 put out here recently, based on the money that On3 says these schools have allotted to NIL, like last year, for example, Texas A&M and Notre Dame were actually very close. A&M was at $9.3 million. Notre Dame was at 8.6. They were 14th and 15th, respectively. So not much difference there just in terms of the flat amount that they're giving out. But, obviously Texas A&M got all those headlines because they shelled out all that money and bought all those recruits. But as Vince said, and what Carter Pearls was saying earlier this week, things didn't work out exactly the way they thought. And so then Brent also says, is pay for play legal or illegal? Now, this revenue share still has to be, completely ratified and all that. But assuming this goes through, which everybody, it's going to, it's legal now. Like basically pay for play is a completely legal thing.
Yeah, it was pretty close to legal before.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it was you're splitting hairs as far as, what pay for play is. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you're not on like a contract where you're getting this to do this, but you're getting NIL money, which essentially you're getting paid to play football.
Right.
So,
and Brent did follow up. He was talking about philosophy, not amount of money. And I mean, basically the difference in philosophy was A&M was just doing what you were talking about, Brent, pay for play. A&M was shelling out money up front without necessarily anything attached to it, whereas that's not what Notre Dame is going to do. Like Notre Dame was still making it about, okay, you're going to get NIL, but we're not just going to give you this chunk of money to get you here. You're actually going to come here, and then you're going to earn your NIL the way it's supposed to be done. But again, now with this, it just completely changes everything. There's going to be NIL opportunities, but there's also just going to be a lot more money that's being paid out across the board to everybody. Andre saying sell, sell, sell. Buy, buy, buy. I don't know. I don't know which one we're doing, if we're selling or we're buying on that. All right. So it's going to be interesting to see where exactly this all goes. And I will be curious again with Notre Dame, if everyone is allowed $20 million a year to pay out, and Notre Dame is with their TV contract making around $20 million less than, these SEC and Big Ten schools. Could that be something as Notre Dame looks to the future? We started off talking about Notre Dame being independent and all that. Like, could that be something that might ultimately push Notre Dame toward a conference down the road? I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on as all of this.
Every time the change is made in college football, Notre Dame's going to be forced to go to a conference now.
Hey,
I believe it when I see it.
Money, Vince. Money, Vince.
When I see it.
There's a lot of smart people who work at Notre Dame.
No,
and they have no problem getting $20 million. I can promise you that too.
Well, let's see if the boosters who are all in on independence feel that way, because I think that's what it's going to take.
Football complex, $200 million. So I don't think 20 is going to be a problem.
Well, $200 million is a one-time price tag. This is going to be an ongoing thing.
I get it.
Every year. So
$1 billion endowment, they'll be all right.
They're not going to dip into that endowment.
I know, but I'm just saying
that's the problem. Is they want to lean on that.
That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is money's out there to be had. If they can have $1 billion endowment, there's money to be had elsewhere too.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
They want to say they have $1 billion endowment. They don't want to spend it, especially on athletes.
Oh, so, I get that. Believe me.
Yeah. All right, guys. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I've been more than ready.
All right. So Jordan Faison and the number 1 ranked Notre Dame men's lacrosse team are playing in the national semifinals this Saturday for a chance for the Irish to repeat as national champions. Salty had this question in the chat the other day. We didn't get to it. Do you buy or sell Mr. Faison becoming the first dual sport national championship player in both lacrosse and football and doing it in the same year?
Ooh. Go ahead, Jess. You can take a stab at this one. I've been doing a lot of talking.
I'm going to say sell. I think Notre Dame lacrosse is going to win the national championship again this season. And while I have high hopes for Notre Dame football, I think they're going to be better than last year, but I'm not ready to say they're going to win the national championship this season. So for that reason, I have to sell it.
Yeah, I mean, the odds are obviously against this occurring. I would love for that to be the case, and obviously Jordan Faison would be a big part of both teams if that ends up happening. I mean, I would love to buy this, but there would be some pretty massive odds against it happening, and so the smart money is to say no.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry. I don't the odds. Well, it would be awesome, especially for Jordan Faison, like being able to, say, hey, I won a national championship at two different teams in the same year. Now, I will say this, maybe in his career, I could see it. I would hesitantly buy in his career that he could win a national championship in both, but doing it both this year, I don't think so. Well, one, it wouldn't even be the same academic year. It might be the same calendar year, but I've got to sell on this though. like
Yeah.
you guys. It's not. I just don't see it happening in the same year. Again, hesitantly, soft buy on doing it in his career, both sports. So Faison is 5th on the lacrosse team with 28 total points this season. Do you buy or sell him having twice as many receptions for the football team this fall?
Oh, that's a lot. I will sell it. I think that's too many because that puts him at 56 receptions. I think that's a lot. I don't see that necessarily occurring. That's about 4 or 5 a game. Depending on how many postseason games there are. I'm trying to think of this as like a 12-game season. And so when I think of the total numbers, right?
Right.
So I'm gonna sell it in a 12-game season having 56 receptions.
I'm going to sell it as well. A 14-game season would be 4 catches a game. I think that's right about where they're going to end up, is 14 games or so, maybe plus or minus 1. So yeah, that's a lot of receptions, basically 60 receptions in a season, right? And so I just think there's a lot. Jordan Faison will have a great role within this offense, and he's definitely a reception type receiver. I just think there's a lot of talent for the ball to go around at the wide receiver position. And I think also with Riley Leonard's ability to make plays with his feet, it's naturally going to take some of those receptions away from wide receivers. So for that reason, I'm going to sell.
Yeah, I've got to sell this as well. And like DJ is saying, he's the number 2 slot. That's a big number. Well, I mean, that number 2 is somewhat relative.
That's relative because he's gonna be on the field at the same time as Greathouse. Yeah.
Right. Greathouse is going to play all over the place. So, and yeah, you're exactly right. Those two are going to be out there on the field quite a bit together. So I still think, though, the number is probably around 35-ish would be the number that I'm putting in because he had a decent amount last year and he didn't even play the full season. He had around 20 receptions last year. So he had a pretty good number when it was all said and done. But I've got to sell 56. I think that, like you guys said, that's a little bit too high. But I see him in that 35 to 40 range, I think is where I'd put him.
That's fair.
I see him getting close to 50, but not over it.
Close to 50? Okay, so you think he'll even be over 40 then?
You know what the receiver who had the most, or what the most receptions by a receiver was last year? Mr. Stiers.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now. I should know this because I look at these stupid stats all the time. It was
Mitchell Evans had the most,
right?
And it was
Mitchell
only
Evans,
8
the type,
games.
yeah, right.
So the leading wide receiver in 12 games was
I believe
Rico
it was Flores, wasn't it? Yeah,
and he had 27.
Yeah,
that was the leading receiver last year, 27. So we're saying that the quote unquote number 2 slot receiver is going to have close to 50. That's a big
different
number.
offense, though. Different offense.
I'm just saying that's a big
I'm saying over 40, but not over 50.
Okay. Still a lot. I'm just saying, still a lot.
Yep. Okay. So Faison's 28 points for the lacrosse team that he has scored this year include 8 assists. Will he have over or under 8 touchdown catches this season?
Under. That's a big number too.
Yeah, I'd say under. I think a more reasonable number would be like 5 or 6, basically 1 touchdown every 2 games. I think that's what I feel more comfortable about.
I like that. Yeah,
they're
not just going to let him run wild this year. I mean, he was kind of an unknown commodity last year, so I think he was able to, take some people by surprise to a degree. He is not an unknown commodity anymore. He's going to be hard pressed to get in the end zone 8 or more times. That would be impressive if he was able to accomplish that.
Too many options out there. Too many legitimate options that they're going to have this year. So I got to go under 8 as well. All right. Hopefully the lacrosse team brings home another national championship, though.
That would be great. They got Denver on Saturday.
That's right. So this is a question someone posed to Stuart Mandel in a mailbag that he had. You have Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, and Brian Kelly. Which one do you hire? Which one do you fire? And which one do you make your offensive coordinator?
Good God.
Hire, fire, offensive coordinator.
This is tough. This is really actually very, very difficult for me.
So we're talking about hire as in head coach, right?
Yes.
Yeah, hire as head coach. You got to hire one as head
I think
coach.
this is easy.
Fire one and then hire the other as the offensive coordinator.
Okay.
I have my mind. I have it in my mind. Jesse, let's see if we match. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm firing Ryan Day for sure.
Okay.
I think he's a cancer. I think that he's a crybaby, and I think he is built. I mean, he's a third base coach. He whines and cries and hasn't really had to work for a whole bunch. So I'm not going to go with that. My offensive coordinator would be Lincoln Riley, and I'd hire Brian Kelly. And I know that's distasteful for some, but the man cranked out 10-win seasons. I think that Brian Kelly found ways to win games in the fourth quarter, and I find him more as a game manager and not really an X and O's type coach, and that's why I got Lincoln Riley. He's running the X and O's of the situation, and Brian Kelly's just kind of, you know what I mean? He's just like the GM of the team at the end of the day. So that's my rationale.
Okay, Vince.
Oh, I could not stomach Brian Kelly as my head coach. I couldn't do it.
Could you stomach Ryan Day?
I would put him in his place. Like, am I the athletic director? I mean, if I'm the one making these decisions, that means I'm his boss. And so I would make sure that he's not bullying old men, and I would make sure that he's not, doing certain things. So I would just reverse the Kelly Day. I would make Day the head coach, because all he does is crank out 10-win seasons as well, by the way. And he's got more national championships, if I'm not mistaken, than Brian Kelly. And so I'll take Ryan Day, and I will make Lincoln Riley
Wouldn't
my
you say,
OC.
though, it's more impressive to do it at Notre Dame than it is at Ohio State?
Yeah, but he didn't win a national championship.
I know, I'm just saying that, but the comparison of 10-win seasons, like, I just think there were more restrictions on Brian Kelly than there were Ryan Day, and I think Ohio State naturally gets better recruits than Notre Dame does.
Ryan Day still won games when it mattered, and Brian Kelly never did. So
you just gave us the Brian Kelly doctrine. Oh, all these things are working against me.
Exactly.
There's all these obstacles in my
Ryan
way.
Day won multiple playoff games and was able to bring home a national championship. So he wins big games. Brian Kelly doesn't. That's my issue.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with Ryan Day being born on third base, but, at the same time, he's going into year 6, and all he's done is won 11 games every year. Now, maybe he'll actually beat Michigan now that Jim Harbaugh is gone and they're not stealing his signs anymore. But, I mean, between him and BK, say that again.
I said that's built on the hard work and labor of Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer.
Still did it. He
Yeah,
still won those games.
This is what I was
Brian Kelly took over Notre Dame when no one like it was in the dump. You know what I mean? It was Tyrone Willingham and Charlie Weis. There was not a lot of outlook.
He had plenty of opportunities.
He rebuilt the program. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but this is a very specific question. Yeah. So, if we're trying to win right now,
games,
I would hire Ryan Day. As Brent says, I was going to mention the track record at quarterback. Like, one thing Ryan Day has clearly done better than Brian Kelly is recruit and
that's why we got Lincoln Riley, baby,
and get them to win. And that's why I would fire BK. I would hire Ryan Day as the head coach, and Lincoln Riley would be the offensive coordinator.
So, are you in agreement with that, Vince? Are you guys on the same team with that one?
Oh, 100%. I would fire Brian
Lincoln,
Kelly.
but Lincoln Riley is your offensive coordinator.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yep. Because I don't think he's a very good head coach. I have not been impressed with him as a head coach. I'm more impressed with him as a coordinator, quarterback developer, that kind of a thing. So yeah, absolutely.
Right. Question from Josh: buy or sell 6 receivers with 20+ receptions this year?
That's a lot.
Well, they had 4 last year, and Faison had 19, and Greathouse had 18. So they were 3 receptions away from 6 guys having it. I think it's an easy over this season.
Well,
I think
one of
so
those
too.
is a tight end. Do we count in tight ends?
No, I'm saying I didn't count the tight end. There was 4 wide receivers and 4 wide receivers that were over 20.
No,
2 wide receivers that were
3.
just under.
It was 3. Rico had 27. Chris Tyree had 26. Jaden Thomas had 21. Then you had Jordan Faison with 19. Greathouse with 18. And then you have to go down to.
And I mean, remember the injuries. Remember the injuries that those guys had, though, as well, that kept them from being there. So that's why, again, like
think
the fact that they're all going to play more and the new system that they're going to be in, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to say yes, 6 receivers, 20 plus.
Well, I did
I
all
think-
that pushback to buy it as well.
Okay.
Because I do think they're going to throw the ball more, and I think they're going to get a lot of guys involved, and so I absolutely think it's going to be
Jordan Love will
You're
also
like
be
Jesse. You completely
20.
argue in one direction, and then you
Yes.
circle back around
Oh,
and
yeah.
answer completely the opposite.
Well, you
I
gotta
fully
give-
intended to say yes, but I had to push back on Jesse because he was wrong.
If you give the best counter argument first, then people have less resistance.
It's all a mental game.
But I think Jordan Love will have over 20 himself, and I will count him as a wide receiver in that situation.
Oh, now we're changing the rules.
You mean Jeremiah Love? No, he's still a running back.
Still a running back.
This is like you can't get mad at announcers for calling Jaden Thomas or Jaden Greathouse a tight end, and talking about counting them toward 12.
That's a completely different scenario.
Well, no, it's not. Like because they've lined up as an extra blocker attached to the line at times, and that's when they were calling them tight ends. It's like you can't get mad. You can't get mad at that if you're going to call Jeremiah Love a wide receiver just because he lines up in the slot every now and then. He's still a running back.
Disagree. He's running the play as a wide receiver.
He's still a running back, though.
This is correct.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that LA Chargers linebacker Denzel Perryman says his new head coach and Vince's favorite, Jim Harbaugh, reminds him of Will Ferrell.
It's a disgrace to Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell is actually a nice guy. He is funny naturally. He's not funny because of how quirky or because of how big of a, certain word he is. I think you could have made that statement maybe when his days at Stanford, like Vince talked about, when he was still enjoyable. I could definitely see that. Tall, lanky, kind of quirky guy, pretty funny, one-liners, those sort of situations, but not anymore. There's just no way. When I saw that, I actually laughed out loud because I was like, there's no way. Like, Will Ferrell is a cool, funny person, and Jim Harbaugh is neither of those things.
Like, is this, like all these people, all these players, said, would always say Bill Belichick, oh, you just got to know him. He's a funny guy, when he's not out there at the press conferences or whatever. He's got a great personality. Like, is there a comedic Jim Harbaugh behind the scenes that we just don't know about? I kind of doubt it.
There's no way.
The quirky part,
yes.
Like,
the quirkiness and that stuff is definitely aligned.
Yeah,
but that's about it.
Right. I agree. Vince?
No, I don't see the resemblance in any way, shape, or form. If you're just talking about just like being crazy, then sure. Like Will Ferrell could, I could see Will Ferrell playing Jim Harbaugh in a movie, like a comedy. Like I could see that, but
I'd actually pay to see that. I think that would be better than that, that King of Queens guy when he was playing.
That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen, by the way. That was so dumb. I watched that movie thing. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting that. Like, it was terrible.
When he was Sean Payton, that's who he was.
Terrible. Yeah. And I like what's his name? The guy, the actor of the King of Queens.
Kevin
like
something, right?
Kevin James.
I
like Kevin James. I think he's funny, but I don't see the parallel between him and Sean Payton, but that's a whole different conversation. I just don't see the resemblance. I could see it being a comedy, him being Jim Harbaugh or something like that, but Jim Harbaugh is no Will Ferrell. Jesse is absolutely right.
You, sir, are no Will Ferrell.
That is correct. Jesse is right. It is an insult to Will Ferrell if you're going to compare the two.
It is. Although, like if Harbaugh got up there on stage, he's like, we're going streaking,
Right.
I think you could equate the randomness as well. You know what I mean? Just not knowing. Like, I'll watch Will Ferrell stuff, and I'm like, dude, where is this coming from? You know what I mean? Like, I've seen him on Dan Patrick before, where he's a completely different character, it feels like. And it's like half the time you're like, is he doing this on purpose? Is this a part of the bit? You know what I mean? And like, that's the part where I think there's a lot of parallels between Jim Harbaugh. You're like, did he really do that? Did he really say that? Is it, you know what I mean? That's maybe the part where I can get most on board with.
Yeah.
But definitely not the comedic side or the person side.
No.
No.
It's all that other stuff. All right. So there's been some talk this week about how Stephen A. Smith was fanboying for the New York Knicks in their playoff series against the Pacers. He's not alone, though. You know, there are plenty of other TV sports personalities who do it. Mike Greenberg has never hidden his fandom for the New York Jets, and obviously there's no mistaking Desmond Howard went to Michigan. So how do you guys feel about these national TV guys, personalities, cheerleading for their teams on these different shows that they're on?
Let me interject before Vince goes real quick. You have to you failed to mention the emergence of the insufferable Rich Eisen during the entire NFL draft.
Good one. The Michigan stuff.
No, Michigan, not the Oh yeah, the Michigan stuff is way too much.
Now, no, but it was driven by Rich Eisen on the NFL Network during the draft this past season. He was like begging teams while the entire clock was going down. Take this Michigan player. Take this Michigan player. It was just.
That's why I don't watch the NFL Network.
Insufferable. I love the NFL Network.
Yeah, that's why. Go ahead, Jess.
But that's the part that frustrated me is during the NFL season, that's my favorite like pregame show to watch is the NFL Network. So I was like, oh, great. They're doing the draft. Should be great. And then it was just Rich Eisen just brutal the whole time. And I think it rubbed me the wrong way so much because it was Michigan. And it was just like a one-off, right? Like it's not like Michigan does this every single time. It's just, yes, there's a reason why you won the national championship. You get a lot of good players on your roster. It takes a whole team. All right, my tangent's over.
No, that's good tangent. I like that because I hate Michigan. I don't know if I've ever said that on the show before. I have no problem with people being honest about who they root for. I have no problem with that as long as your evaluation is unbiased.
There's no blind as long as it doesn't.
But
the
problem with that though is your opinion or your analysis automatically becomes biased once you reveal what your rooting interest is, because then all people see when Stephen A. Smith starts talking about the Knicks, any team that's not, any fan who's not a fan of the Knicks is like, oh, he's just he loves the Knicks.
Well, I mean, and that's fine, but I think that's ignorance on the fans' part too. If they are actually unbiased in their evaluations, that's the thing. I don't think Mike Greenberg, he says he's a New York Jets fan and, he'll be the first one to say that, but I don't think his evaluation or his analysis skews towards the Jets. Now, partly because they're terrible and they have been.
Well, and he's a host, and most of the time he's not like on that show.
He's setting other people up.
The players, for them to give their analysis.
So,
right.
I have no problem with that as long as you're unbiased when it comes to your analysis. And I think if you are an educated fan, you can see the difference. You can cut through the BS. The problem with Stephen A. Smith is he's an idiot. So it just doesn't.
He's a well-paid idiot.
He is a well-paid idiot. There's a lot of those out there. Believe me, I work for some. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not here.
Oh, okay.
So
did we just cross some boundary?
No. But no, I just think that as long as you can keep it straight, I think it's fine. I like the honesty. I actually don't have a problem with it.
So
go ahead.
I'm mainly along the same, like when I started thinking about it, my initial reaction was, yes, I don't like it. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I also love Michael Irvin. And what does Michael Irvin do every NFL?
Cheerleads for the Cowboys.
Cheerleads for the Cowboys and goes on a monologue and gets all fired up and, those sort of things. And so I have to agree with Vince. As long, like Michael Irvin can still be honest and still be passionate and want his team to win, right? Like he can say, this is what needs to happen, but also realistically, this is probably what's going to happen. And that's what I'm okay with. Like, as long as you're giving honest analysis and not just like Desmond Howard thinking that everyone is just going to win. Michigan is going to win every game because they're Michigan.
Exactly.
I think there's a difference between that. You could still be a fan and still be realistic at the same time.
That was going to be my exact point.
The players are automatically attached to whatever team that they used to play for. So there's not a lot of mystery there. Like in terms of the hosts and things like that, you're really not going to know unless they reveal it on the show. And I get, it's just the lines have dramatically blurred probably over the last 20 or so, gradually over the last 20 years and quite a bit, over the last 5 to 10 years, probably. I don't have as big a problem like with the Rich Eisen stuff, because like in that case, Rich Eisen is doing the NFL draft and he's talking about NFL.
He's
things on
hyping up the
NFL
players.
Network,
He's not saying anything bad about them.
Right. Whereas, like his fandom is, the college side. So it's, like you can sort of separate that a little bit more. But when Stephen A. Smith is at a Knicks game and he's supposed to be giving you his opinion about the Knicks, and he's, basically just either cheering or pouting based on which way the Knicks are playing, I have a bigger problem with that on national TV. And remember, I'm talking about national TV, guys, like doing what we do. There's some automatic assumed bias in what we do, right? Because we're
Absolutely
sitting here doing an Irish breakdown podcast and we cover Notre Dame all the time. But, I'm talking about like, I just feel like there's supposed to be a different standard when you're on national TV in terms of,
with that.
The allegiances that you are actually supposed to have. You're not supposed to be rooting on national TV in those.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I agree with that. You should not be rooting for it. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Did you guys watch any of Saban during the NFL draft?
A little bit.
Just a little. I didn't see a lot.
I watched a decent chunk of it because that's actually the station that I ended up watching mostly. Now, I wasn't paying complete attention, and DK says Saban was biased when talking about his players. I find that to be a little bit different just because he has intimate knowledge of these players.
He's promoting them
every single day.
And he just retired a couple months ago. Yeah.
That's different than like a Rich Eisen, for example, who's just a super fan who went to school there. Nick Saban actually coached these guys. And I will also say, I think his knowledge of other players was actually really, really good. Of like the guys that went in the first couple of rounds. I thought his knowledge was really
apparently
good.
They gave him.
So was Bill Belichick.
I was listening to a podcast that had one of the ESPN execs on there, and they told him, you're really only going to do the first couple of rounds, so you probably need to know about 90 or so players. And they sent him film and stuff like that. Apparently, he kept asking for more. Like he was crunching film on 120, 150 players or something. So
and I think he did a good job. I really thought he did a good job.
So the thing about, I would say that in all fairness, I can never be a professional referee in the NFL or an umpire in the MLB. I would be biased. Cowboys I'm reffing a Cowboys game. I'm umping a Cubs game. You know what I mean? It's like, and it wouldn't be, don't get me wrong, it wouldn't be by intention. It's just that's when you want something to go a certain direction, it's just naturally your brain is going to kind of, I think, default to that.
Sure. I could see that.
Well, and there was, I don't know if you remember, during the NCAA tournament, there was a female official who was sent home from the NCAA tournament because she was officiating at the site of the school that she went to, her alma mater that she had. So
not that she did anything wrong, but just to make
they
sure
didn't want anything to come of it.
Right.
Yeah,
but she was supposed to have disclosed that, I guess, up front and didn't.
They can't look at her resume to see where she went
to school. That's why they sent her home.
Does she have to bring it up? Like, I went here for school, by the way.
Yes. All right. It's Top Gun time.
Finally, 2 weeks in the waiting. I have been waiting and waiting for this I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it.
I know.
Yeah, didn't you guys go through this last week? Isn't this basically just me?
No, we didn't do it last week. We were waiting for you.
Oh.
We were supposed to, but we didn't because this is about you.
Yes.
I'm glad you all know that.
So Jesse came home a couple of weeks ago. He watched Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick with me for the first time ever. So Jesse gets to lead us off in this one, but there are plenty of categories here for Vince and I to chime in with as well. Fill in the blank, Jesse. The original Top Gun is blank.
The original Top Gun is a very good movie. I loved it. I thought that it was perfect length. I thought there was no wasted storyline. I thought that it had the perfect, ups and downs of the highs, and it gave you some of the lows, the sadness. It wasn't all just, Maverick does everything right. There's going to be, some things that go wrong, But I thought it was overall a very good movie, very enjoyable, and something that I would watch again.
Did you remember anything from watching that? Like you had said, you thought maybe you had seen parts of it over the years. Did you?
I remember
anything?
I remember a lot of not a lot of, but I remember the flying scenes. And I knew what the concept of the movie was. I guess I just didn't realize, like I had the bones of it, but I didn't have any of the details, the finer details.
This is interesting. Stymie says Top Gun is a chick flick. The military setting was intentional to trick men into watching. Well, I'll tell you what, like there is a short list of movies that my wife and I can both, be like all in on.
Yeah.
Top Gun is one of the movies at the top of the list, and Top Gun Maverick is right there as well. Bridesmaids, Pulp Fiction, interestingly enough, she's always been just like me, all in on Pulp Fiction.
But I don't think that's one that
she's Dirty Dancing. I'm the other. Yeah. Like I'm saying, unanimous approval rating. Wedding Crashers is one of them.
That's a classic.
Vince Vaughn.
So good.
But Top Gun, that Vince and I love Top Gun. So I don't have a whole lot to add to that. Okay. So let's go. Favorite scenes. Vince, do you want to give us one of your favorite scenes, and then we'll go to
Jess? Start with Top Gun, or are we doing both?
We're just doing Top Gun right now.
Okay.
We'll come to Maverick and do that separately. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll start with one. I mean, it's the classic, right? It's the target rich environment, and then they end up with you've lost that loving feeling. Like, how could you not? That's just an iconic scene. It's one of my favorite lines is, it's a target rich environment. Like that's
right.
Classic line. Love it.
And I
said a line already, but
yeah, that's right. Figured it out yet? That's I mean, have you guys, so you're talking about the bar scene where he meets Kelly McGillis and they sing You've Got That Lovin' Feeling or You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling, which is just like classic.
Yes.
Have you guys, probably not with Jesse because this movie is so old, have you ever actually witnessed anyone attempt that move? Like I tell you what,
singing in the bar, like singing that song in particular.
As someone who was in the military for the next 4 years, this movie came out in 86. I went into the Army in 87, and having been on, they're on post in that was like an officers club type thing,
right?
I think, but been in plenty of NCO enlisted clubs on military posts, and they were fortunate to have a target rich environment because military, it's literally at least 10-to-1 ratio male to female. But I have been there multiple times during my brief Army stint. Multiple times I've seen the move tried.
Wow.
In different clubs, like the singing of the song and the whole thing.
Any successes?
No.
That's even better. No. Just to watch somebody just flame out and burn. Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah. But that is one of the classic, again, like everyone was trying that afterwards. And, everyone knew exactly what you were talking about as soon as you started singing. You've lost that love and feeling. So, I mean, that's one at the top of the list. And then the next day, of course, like in the movie, when they meet Charlie for the first time and they're at the meeting and, it's like, the whole thing. You were in a 4G inverted dive with a MiG-28s, and
what were you doing?
Yeah. It's classified.
Yeah.
I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you, and the whole thing. And
you guys, that was my
keeping up foreign relations. Go ahead, Jess.
That was one of my favorite scenes was the next day after the bar situation, and obviously she walks in, realizes that she's the instructor, and then the whole conversation of, I was inverted, and then, just kind of getting one over on her, essentially, I thought was great. I thought that then to me it was the him saving Iceman was up there as well for me.
Oh, at the end. Okay.
At the end, yeah.
You can be my wingman anytime.
You can, bullshit.
You could be mine.
So you guys have seen it so many times that you know the lines.
Oh my God.
They're not engraved in my head.
You can't even imagine.
Oh, that's great. Ice, man.
So, and that was tough with like you sitting there watching it for the first time for me not to just be blurting out lines.
Yes.
I mean, That would have been really annoying, right? If I was just sitting there blurting them all out, which some people will do. Obviously, Vince. Yeah. So those are, by the way, I like watching this. Anthony Edwards, very underrated for his comedy in this movie.
Yes.
I think.
He's like he's literally the wingman.
Yeah.
And so he has all these one-liners and they're fantastic.
Yeah. I hate it when he does that. I hate it when she does that. Well, I guess I'll save the lines.
Well, we've said a bunch already, unfortunately, but
like the Great Balls of Fire. So, when when he plays the piano. Yeah. That's what's crazy is apparently Anthony Edwards played the piano and they were sitting there and he just went at it and they ad-libbed that whole thing, I guess.
That's amazing.
We get to see Meg Ryan for the first time before When Harry Met Sally. And like that was, I like the locker room scene where Ice tells Maverick, you're everyone's problem, and like
dangerous.
You're dangerous. That's right. Ice. And, and does the snap with his teeth and all that stuff. I am dangerous. Any other scenes you guys have?
Like the good ones.
I like the celebration at the end, like after what Jesse was talking about when he saves Iceman and, like the whole, you
all
can be
hugging
my wing. Yeah. And like
all the bro hugs and everything. Yeah.
Buzzing the tower, like that's pretty cool as well.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I always thought it was, it's kind of an iconic scene, I guess, but when he's on the motorcycle and the plane, goes over him, you know what I mean? And he's like, yeah, all right. It's kind of corny, but at the same time, it's iconic because they did it again in the next movie as well. So
we'll get to that. We'll get to that here coming up. All right. Favorite lines. And there are like a million from this. There are many more from the first one than there were from the second one.
Many. We've said most of them, to be perfectly honest with you.
I feel the need for speed.
Classic.
Turn and burn. We're going ballistic. She's lost that feeling. I hate it when she does that.
Right
before they start singing.
I hate it when she
Brent's got a good one. They were abused children.
That's a great Anthony Edwards line.
Yep. And then when they're looking at the plaque on the wall, oh, no. There's 2 O's in Goose Boys.
It's great. It's fantastic.
Do some of that pilot stuff. Oh, there's another Goose one. Do you have the number of that truck driving school when he gets in trouble?
When he thinks they're going to get kicked out?
Yep. Son, your ego's writing checks your body can't catch. The bald guy, the commander. At the beginning. Jesse, do you have any? Do you have any more? Turn and burn. I'm trying to think.
Sorry, there's
not a line
going on right now.
Not a line, but the high five, low five move. I don't think I had ever seen that before.
During the volleyball game?
Well, and there was also, I think when they did I feel the need for speed, they did high low when they're out on the flight line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But they also did it during the volleyball game. And that's actually the volleyball game is. I forgot that as a scene.
Iconic scene.
But yeah,
a little gratuitous for my taste, but
Well, and again, we'll get to that in a minute because there was a sports scene in the second one as well. So we'll go a little bit more.
Yes, there was
in detail. Jess, are you okay? Are the cats going to make it? I don't
know. There's a lot of activity going on.
Apparently, there is.
I'm trying to mute myself, or you would have heard a lot of things. So
yeah.
Like I said, though, I can't remember the lines. It's like seeing a movie the first time.
Yeah, you've only seen it one time, so it's tougher for you. They're emblazoned in our heads since we've seen it so many. Anything that bugs you about the original?
Yes. Well, what bugs me is the relationship between
the Charlie.
Yeah, I feel like Tom Cruise could do better. How about that? I'll just say it.
A lot of people here apparently are Charlie fans.
I just don't see it. It just looks like he's dating a mom, like a MILF or something like that. Like that's what I always like. He's like she's way older than him, and that's what it looks like. I don't know what the actual age difference is, but she just looks so much older than him.
Apparently, do you know who Linda Fiorentino is?
I think so.
She was the female in Vision Quest. She's been in, like some.
Okay.
I can't remember if you actually saw Vision Quest.
I have not.
Not.
It's on my things to do list.
She was up for the role, I guess, and like she turned it down because too much of a military theme. She wasn't in on the war theme, and I guess Matthew Modine, who was the lead in Vision Quest, he was actually considered for Maverick, but the same deal. Like he didn't like the pro-war kind of stance, I guess.
Oh,
that the movie had.
Settle down.
So yeah, I like the only thing, especially after watching it a million times, and as I look back on it now as an older man as opposed to the young guy who saw it the first time. And I mentioned this because Jesse and his mom and me, we were watching the movie together. Maverick just tries to eat Charlie's face when they're making out. And it's just like, he's like, ow, mouth. And he's like shoving his tongue down her throat.
I didn't need the scene in the house, actually.
It's a little bit much.
It was extra. It was extra. Wasn't necessary.
Yep. I feel like it really holds up though for a movie that's 40 years old.
100%.
I watched it the other day, and there's like, especially movies that you've seen a million times, like it is still to me entertaining all the way up until Goose dies. Like when Goose dies, obviously that's a rough spot.
Well,
and
that's my bone to pick.
Yeah.
Every time I watch it, I'm like, maybe he makes it. Like I can't. I hate it.
Well, Goose, get out of the tailspin this time.
Like, I hate it. I hate that part. I realize it's a movie, and I realize, they decided to kill him. I absolutely hate it every time. I love the character of Goose, and I hate that he dies. I hate it. That's my bone to pick.
I know. Could they have made it without Goose dying though?
Yes, I think they could have. I don't know how, but yes.
No, Goose had to die.
A sad Meg Ryan is sad for everybody.
I think they had to, like, there had to be, sort of that hurdle that Mav had to get over. Unfortunately, I think that he had to die. And this is what's interesting. Tim Robbins was Merlin from the first scene, and then he ends up being the wingman in that, in the last scene as well. I could have lived with a little bit, like if Tim Robbins could have been a little bit more central. I think that might have been good. And that's like the one thing. We're gonna have to, Gordy and Not, we're gonna have to ban you. We're gonna have to ban you from this if you don't watch out. Like a little more interaction maybe with some of the other guys at Top Gun, than just like
they did a better job of that in the second one.
Yeah,
they did a better job of that in the second one. I will say that they made it more of a an ensemble cast, which I actually appreciated. So
this is funny. Michael said when he watched it with his wife the first time, she said, "I'm done if Goose dies," during the piano scene.
I'm telling you, look, Maverick and Goose got absolutely robbed that they didn't win the Top Gun award. Okay,
I know.
They got robbed, and that I will
deck my bleep.
That's still a bone to pick with the movie.
I know.
They got absolutely robbed. I'm sorry. He didn't deserve to lose that out. He didn't deserve it.
See, in this, Herrick brings up a great point, and I was thinking this. I mean, obviously, one of the main themes of the second movie was Goose's death and his son, but Herrick says Goose had to die, but it also ruined a good character that I missed in the sequel. I mean, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Right. Okay, fill in the blank. Top Gun Maverick, Jesse, is blank.
Better than the original. That's what I got.
I think it like Vince is sitting there and like,
I mean,
I told you before we watched it, I think it's a better movie. Like the first one is wildly entertaining, still very entertaining, and I'm still all in on Top Gun. But I do think like the story and as a movie, I think Maverick is better than the original.
Yeah, I do too. And like I said, I like the fact that it was an ensemble cast a little bit more. It had all the feels, and so it almost had to be the second one because some of the things that you felt by watching the second one, you had to get from the first one, but it elevated the second one. Does that make sense?
Because I mean, it's basically beat for beat. They just rip off the first movie and do a lot of the same things. I mean, you get like a pivotal flight scene right away. Mav gets sent to Top Gun in spite of, the wishes of his CO and getting in trouble right away. You get the early bar scene where you get a lot of exposition and stuff like that. He finds the love interest there. And, Rooster is basically the avatar for Goose. Penny replaces Charlie. Hangman is Iceman, and on down the line, So now we might have a tough time with, I've seen some people chiming in that they haven't seen the first one and they don't want us to do spoilers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Can we talk about this stuff without complete spoilers?
They're just gonna look. Spoiler alert!
You might just have to suck it up because it's been 2 years, right? Like
spoiler alert. You have been warned. Don't listen if you don't want it to be spoiled. That's all I can tell you.
Right now, Top Gun Maverick a little bit longer than the original, but I also had had a hard time figuring out like what you would cut out because there's so much that they jam into it. And Brent's saying Maverick is better than the original. And again, I'm completely on record. I am all in on the original Top Gun, but just as a movie and like the storyline in the movie, Top Gun Maverick is better than Top Gun.
100%. The love interest, much better.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you take into account like how much older, I guess, the actors are or whatever, it's not even close as far as the love interest. I mean, she is target rich environment. That's the target you want right there, not Charlie, to me, in my opinion. So the love interest already made the movie better. And then, like I said, the ensemble cast, you actually got to know a lot of the different pilots that were under the tutelage of Maverick during the whole thing.
Right.
And I like that because you got to know them more. You got to be invested in them more. And I think that was important. It made the movie better because you were kind of going along the ride with them. So, yeah.
Favorite scenes. Jesse, I'm going to start with you this time. Did you have a favorite scene from this last one, Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah, there were a few. The top one would be when he does the canyon run under a ridiculous time. I can't remember.
Way under the time. Yep, that was one of mine for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean,
and they're all just sitting there like, damn. Like they're all shocked, and that was awesome.
Because like even Hangman is like, whoa, when he's running the mission, exactly.
That one, I would say the very beginning one with the Dark Star, I think is great. And then
you're talking about the beginning, seeing the Mach 10 sequence, and all that stuff. Yeah, and it's like it also tells you everything that you need to know.
That's true.
Like it's been 30 years, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but it's like it's been 30 years. But we find out right away. Here's Maverick. He's still doing Maverick stuff. He's still rogue and he's doing his own thing and going against the grain, but he's also still loyal to a fault and all those different things we find out, pretty quickly about Mav. So I thought it was like a great first scene to start the movie off with. I guess it wasn't technically the first scene, but the first big.
That's pretty close. Basically. I mean, pretty close. Yeah.
Because remember, he's like working on the plane in the hangar and all that.
First action scene.
Does the motorcycle like you talked about?
Does the motorcycle. It's important. Yep. What else you got, Jess?
Anything? Scene, and then the final battle.
Okay. Final battle is good. That takes a while too, which is kind of nice. I like that.
Well, I think there was a lot of unexpected twists for how they handle the last battle, how they get out of the last battle.
Well, I know the movie could have ended like 5 different times there.
Right.
Once they're flying the mission, and it's like boom, 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 and it's like the very first time. Again, I don't want to spoil this, but like the very first, sort of, like the screen goes black. Do you remember? And I'm trying to talk around this because I'm trying to help out, some of our people who are going to be completely ticked if we spoil. But like something happens and it's like, whoa, did that guy?
Yeah, did that just happen? Did that really just happen?
Yeah, exactly. But then it goes on and then something else happens and it's like, well, it could end right here, but then it goes on, again, it just, it kept happening. So yeah, good sequences. All right. Jesse's giving a bunch of his, Vince. What about you?
I again, this is going to be the sentimental side, but the scene with Iceman and Maverick together, you know,
Right.
and Iceman's sick and he's got to kind of talk through, you know, the computer and all of that stuff. And then he whispers in his ear and it's like, oh man, yeah, that was great. Love that. I'm a sucker for a buddy movie and they are obviously buddies. So
Right.
I really enjoyed that. I mean, can't go wrong with the intro scene in the bar where Maverick's sitting at the
Exactly.
bar. All the young guys are coming in and they're shooting jabs at each other. Like I enjoy
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. And then of course you see,
You get the piano.
yeah, exactly.
You get Rooster on the piano.
And him getting tossed out, you know, because
Right.
he can't pay the bill.
And then
you know,
they don't know who they tossed out. And again, you get a flashback, you know, like to the first movie. Next day, they come out of the bar and they're all, you know, they're in the hangar. They're getting ready. Now it's Maverick leading the class and not Charlie. But all
right,
these guys, you know, you get the, oh crap, you know, looks
right.
because of what just happened the next day. Yeah. Or the day before.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you guys basically hit all my scenes. John Hamm, by the way, I was thinking about this today, you know, like the looks that Cyclone John Hamm is giving Maverick throughout the movie. I had 3 wrestling coaches in high school. The first one, who was actually the best of the 3, who was, you know, unfortunately let go after my sophomore season, but him and my first platoon sergeant in the Army, Sergeant St. John, the looks that John Hamm gives Maverick throughout the movie are basically the looks that I got from my wrestling coach and my platoon sergeant in the Army. It's just like this, you know, complete, you know, I don't know if it was complete disdain that they were giving me, but I will say those looks from, you know, they definitely motivated me the way Cyclone ultimately, you know, pissed off Maverick and motivated him as well. So
That's fair.
yeah, but I've been on the Maverick end of those looks before. So
Definitely fair.
yes. All right, favorite lines. I'm just going to start with mine since you guys ripped through all the scenes earlier.
Yeah, and I honestly, I've seen it a few times, but I don't know that I could come up with any specific lines. I haven't rewatched it since then. So you guys are much more recent.
I do like the Ed Harris, you know, when he's in the control room and he's like, "You got balls, I'll give you that stick jockey."
Stick jockey.
I thought that was a good one.
That's great.
The end is inevitable, Maverick, and then Maverick, you know, he's like, your kind is headed for extinction, and Maverick gives him the maybe so, sir, but not today. And then I don't like that look, Maverick. It's the only one I got.
Those are all good ones.
Those are my favorites. Yeah.
Those are all good ones. I don't really have any lines. So, Jess, you got anything?
But there's callbacks to the first one as well.
No.
It's like, come on, Mav, do some of that pilot stuff, you know, just like Goose was saying. And you got, you know, Mav threw a talk to me Goose in there. And then Rooster did a talk to me dad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I like when they got in the old plane, you know, and they're like, oh, this relic, you know, and they're firing it up. And now Maverick's back in his, you know, his element because it's the old school plane that he flew in the first one, obviously. So I like that one. I like that part.
Yeah. Anything that bugs you guys about Maverick, Top Gun Maverick?
The only thing that bugs me is the fact that he's still the same rank that he was 30 years ago. Like,
right.
I don't know enough about the military to know if that would even be plausible. Like, he just keeps getting his rank busted down.
I just don't think it is because after 30 years,
they're going to kick you out.
Well, once you stop making rank,
you
get they tell you to retire. You know?
Right. So
like
that
you don't get to hang around much longer. Yeah.
That's the only part that bugged me is that he was still the same rank that he was in the 80s. Like, that was like, well, really? So that was the only part, really.
Yeah. You, Jess? I honestly don't have much. Like, I really don't think I have anything. Like I said, it is such a good movie. Like, it
really is.
Like, I agree with what you're saying. Like, they had to obviously go a long way to make that storyline. You know, the only other thing is, like Brent was saying, Mach 10 is impossible. And like, that is like, they start off with him pushing. They hadn't even got to Mach 9, and then he pushes over Mach
like
10.
10-2 or something
Yeah,
like that, or whatever it
exactly.
ended up being.
So,
Yeah.
And exactly how far did he travel? It feels like he would have been in Australia if he was
right.
if he was really doing
Well,
Mach
it looked
10,
like he
or
traveled
over the
back in
Pacific
time
someplace.
because when he
Yeah.
walked into that diner, it was like the 50s.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
I'm not exactly sure how that went down.
All right. Jesse's got to get going here pretty soon. He's looking a little annoyed, actually, right now. I don't know if he's hangry, like he needs a Snickers over there or what, but
I just got dinner planned, so
okay.
He's hangry.
There's a sports scene in each.
Yes, there is.
You've got the beach volleyball scene in the original, dogfight football in the sequel. Which is the better scene?
It's not even close.
I think the football one is better.
It's the volleyball one. Sorry. Because they tried way too hard in the second one to make it look, it was a throwback to that one.
They had to figure out
yeah.
a way to not, it's like, what can we do that's going to be close to this?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously both were just a, blatant,
yes,
let's get their shirts off and let everybody see abs and muscles and stuff like
correct.
that.
I liked the football one better because the volleyball one was distracted by him having to go catch his lady, and I thought the second one was more of like the team bonding and the team building. I liked the fact that his boss came out there, John Hamm, and got mad at him, and he basically was like, "Yeah, I don't care."
Yeah, he's like, "You wanted a team? I'm giving you a team."
Well,
they're out there doing team stuff.
I will say in Maverick, it fit better into the movie. It wasn't just a random volleyball game.
Well, yeah,
I will give you that. I would give you that.
It's like you go from they're in the classroom and you get, Slider, you stink, and then all of a sudden you're out there on the beach and, Slider, Rick Rossovich is out there doing the pose down with the baby oil. And there was actually a great thread on Twitter last week that the anniversary was literally last week, 38 years. And, it was about a 40 post thread or something like that.
Those are great.
It was like all these different facts on Top Gun. They literally put those guys out there, sprayed baby oil on them, and the director said they basically sex cells. That's what they were going for when they threw them out there in the beach volleyball.
And now it's an iconic scene. So I mean, they weren't wrong.
Yep. Yeah, and you did get the high five, low five, from Mav and Goose in that, like you were talking about. But Cruz is playing in his Levi's, and
who plays volleyball in their jeans?
I know. Slider and Ice are wearing sweatpants out there.
Hilarious.
And there's like a 57 Chevrolet or a 55 in the background or something.
Hilarious.
Like that. Yeah. I got to go with the beach volleyball, though. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So, final question. There's been talk of another sequel since the success of Top Gun Maverick. Do we want another sequel after watching both movies?
No.
I'd say no. I think it's hard for the second to be better than the first, and I think it'd be even harder for the third to top the second and the first.
Bingo. Don't mess with success. Don't mess with it.
It was already a risk to do the second one.
It was.
You're tempting fate to do a third one.
It was a huge risk 40 years later or whatever it is to do a second one.
Yeah.
And
because again, they went beat for beat. Basically just, like how they formulated the story from the first one to the second one. So what are you going to do in the third one? You can't just copy that again, or it's just like, well, we just saw this movie. Like what's the story they could come up with to make this even remotely interesting and not just completely cheesy at this point? Because it felt like Pete Mitchell was on the verge of maybe hanging it up after that last mission anyway. So, I mean, because you got to keep Penny involved and you got to keep Rooster involved. Basically, you've got to keep all the main characters involved.
Right.
Like Ice, well, we can't, no spoilers, but would you try to bring back a couple characters from the original and work them into the storyline now? I don't know. I just think you're risking ruining a good thing by trying to do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Don't mess with it. Don't mess with it.
Right. All right. Well, Jesse's got to go eat. So
we're going to be late, so we can just keep going.
I didn't realize you had reservations. Sorry. You didn't tell me before we started.
I didn't think we were going to go.
I thought you said you needed to be done by 7.
Yeah, I still need to shower, get ready.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up then. Appreciate you. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll talk to you Tuesday. We won't be here Monday. We'll talk to you Tuesday. Peace out. Ivy Nation Sports Talk.